Okay, so this is our presentation. I'm Brandon, this is Luis, and that's Eddie. So for our presentation, we chose problem knowledge that says, to what extent is the world made for human use, allowing humans to do what we want? To go a little bit further, we're going to be looking at the problem of knowledge and how it relates to our world. So we're going to relate what roles we play and what consequences or responsibility we may have in maintaining the planet. As such, some current issues that apply today that you may keep in mind are sustainability, deforestation, resources, and then we will also be using the knowers perspective, which is right here. We're going to be looking at different areas of knowledge and also different ways of knowing. This is a common concept in TOK, so you guys should get familiar with this. And now we're going to go into our first activity. It's the Mad Lib. So we passed out the worksheet. That's one of the worksheets you got. So if you guys don't know how to fill a Mad Lib, there's blanks in there that say either adjective, noun, or verb. You just fill it in however you want. We encourage creativity and to go whichever way you guys want. Create your own story. And then at the end, we're going to ask for some people to share it, and we're also going to ask you guys some questions on them. You skip to the next one. So then as you guys are finishing, would anyone like to share a story? It's okay if you guys haven't finished. Would you want to get some of your stories? Hmm? Oh. So, does anyone want to share? No. Come on, guys. Natalia?
Only because nobody else is sure. Okay, so Perón was a man from Buenos Aires, Ohio. One day he walked out of his pink balcony, that's the name of the presidential house, holding a piece of beef. He decided to throw it to the train tracks. He then went on his run when he encountered a disgusting immigrant. He followed the immigrant back to its home, where he saw that it had its own family and lived with herds of it. He looked around the home, being overcome with a strong sense of poverty. He then noticed that their home was being destroyed by a giant cow farm going through the middle of their home. He realized that the destruction had been caused by the large corporation of Argentina. He felt a strong feeling for the corporation. It filled him with happiness, and he wanted to help it. He realized he had a choice. He could either help or destroy the animals. He decided to destroy them. He was so satisfied after doing so and returned to his life.
So why did you choose to destroy the animals at the end of the story? Because we gave you a choice to help or destroy them.
Well, mine was based on historical facts. And in Argentina, they really didn't like immigrants that were coming in from World War II. So I just decided, let's just run with it.
Okay. That's nice. Anyone else want to share theirs? Don't worry if it's not finished. You can share like whatever portion you got. Christian?
Okay. George W. Bush was a man from Lebanon, Ohio. One day he walked out of his villa holding a piece of beef jerky. He decided to throw it in the recycling can. He then went on his run where he encountered a black panther. He followed the panther back to his home where he saw it had its own family and lived with Sturgis. He looked around the home, being overcome with the strong scent of never mind.
That's
Strong
fine.
scent of urine. He then noticed that their home was being destroyed by a giant oil spill going through the middle of their home. He realized that the destruction had been caused by the large corporation of BP. He felt a strong feeling for the corporation. It filled him with happiness and wanted to help it. He realized he had a choice. He could either help or destroy the animal. He decided to destroy them. He was so happy after doing so.
So you also destroy the animals?
Yeah.
Do you know why?
Well, I guess. No, I don't know.
That's fine. Go to the next line. So did anyone choose to like help the animals? Did you guys get there? Just you people? Like, wow, that's a small portion. You guys all destroy the animals?
Yeah.
You guys are nice people. Okay, so with this Mad Lib, we wanted to show we gave you guys all the same copy of the generic story with fill-in blanks, and yet we got two different, or more than two different stories. Like with theirs, it wasn't the same story, but in the end, they both destroyed the animals. And you that raised your hand, you guys helped the animals. So what we were trying to show is that, you know, the different stories that come out of it, even though we're giving you guys the same general template. And what happens to create these different stories is you guys use your own personal motives or reasons to lead you to the decision in the end whether to destroy or destroy or help the animals. And so we're looking at Natalia's, she used Argentina because she does not love what's going on in there, the government. And Christian used George W. Bush, and he also used an oil company. So what we see here is, even though Christian said, you know, he had no reason, he used negative and evil connotations. So like when we think of oil companies, we always think, oh, they're evil because of all the oil spills. And Natalia also has an evil connotation with Argentina and the government in place. So what they're doing is they're associating destroying the animals and the harm done to the animals with evil companies or evil people. And this is representative of our problem of knowledge, which show how in humans we have our own personal beliefs, and we hold those in high regard. And we believe those to be higher than anyone else's or higher than the animals' rights. We don't think of what they're doing. So the oil companies obviously don't think about the animals that are being killed when they drop oil in the ocean. So now we're going to take you into our first real life situation. As you see here are some pictures of India. It is the second most populated nation in the world right after China. And it definitely has some beautiful sights such as these, as the Taj Mahal. Very nice. But what a lot of people don't know, or what some people don't know, is that it's also one of the most polluted places. Studies were shown on the Indian residents' lungs that show their lungs actually work at a rate of 30% less than most Europeans. Also, another study was done that rated the top 20 most polluted cities, and 13 of the Indian cities were in the top 20. Also, the rivers, they have 2 of the rivers in the top 10. So it is definitely one of the most polluted places. As you can see, these children are struggling to breathe. They have to like cover their faces so they don't take in all the smoke and harm their lungs. The biggest reasons for so much pollution is fuel wood and biomass burning, and these are human-done actions because they want to gain more resources from the land, so they do these things to gain resources. The many Indian people that live there have to live with this pollution. It has become their way of life. They have no way else to live. They can't do anything about it, so they're forced under these conditions. This is a great example of us as a species taking advantage of our environment and planet and not thinking about the consequences. What they did for fuel wood and biomass burning was for our own personal benefit, to gain resources and such. However, we didn't think about the long-term effect and what would happen to the air and the nation as a whole. So in the end, even though we managed to benefit at first, we may have hurt ourselves more. We as the species, hurt ourselves more in the damaging the air. Now we go to our second real-life situation, the Polynesian Islands. So long ago, between 400 and 900 AD, there was these group of Polynesians that migrated to an island. And on the island, they formed tribes. There were like 12 different tribes. However, there was not one single leader. So what they did is each tribe had their own single chief or a group of chiefs that led them. To show that they were chiefs, they started building large statues such as these. However, to build these statues, it took a lot of resources, so they had to chop down all the trees on the island, and this led to a deforestation problem. They used these trees to create tools so that way they could move the statues around the island. So, after they got done chopping down all the trees, this eventually led to another problem within the natural environment because all the trees were gone, and then where did the animals live? The animals that relied on the natural environment. So they also died out. And eventually the Polynesians that lived there, they had no food source. They just killed all the plants, which killed all the animals. So they turned to cannibalism instead. So in these past two situations, we see the common theme of us as a human species taking advantage of our environment. However, we don't think of what could happen after it. We only think of ourselves. We only think of we're selfish in that way as a human species at times. We may not realize it because obviously in the Indian situation, we were doing that to gain as a whole resource. However, this led to negative consequences because it damaged the air. And in the Polynesian, it even killed off the Polynesians that were living there because they had to turn to cannibalism. We are not only damaging ourselves, though. We're not only damaging our human species when we do this, when we believe that we're higher than everyone else within the world. We are also damaging whatever plants there could be, the natural environment and the planet, and we are also damaging any potential animals that live there. So now we want to get some of your perspectives. How do these situations relate to what you guys see in the world? Are there any instances that you can compare? Natalia.
Well, there's a clay mine right by, and we have just seen the total decimation of that mountain over the past several years. But then, of course, I always think that, that is somebody's livelihood. So there's something to argue that, there's an industry and there's people that industry supports.
Any other instances you guys see in the world? Oh, Christian.
Well, I guess we can look at deforestation within South America and Central America, where they're basically cutting down trees in order to farm. So from a personal perspective, they're creating like a livelihood for themselves because they need to support their families or somehow have an economic form of sustenance. But then you look as well that they as a whole, they're destroying entire ecosystems because they're not realizing that my individual actions combined with other people's individual actions have a greater impact.
So in the end, those people hold their own attitude in high regard, and they don't think about the consequence. Okay, that's good. Thank you. To what extent are we, humans, allowed to use our surrounding resources? What rights do we have to them? What morality or ethics that we may use to support that? Do you think we're doing that right now? Do you see a lot of that? Okay. Kyle?
I feel any rights that humans have are self-imposed, so it really depends on the perspective of people. For instance, the farmer in South America think they have the right to slash and burn the trees because it's their property and they need to find income to survive, whereas someone who's more environmentally aware might not do that and think it's not the right. It just really depends on the perspective of the person.
Okay. Do you feel any responsibility or do you feel more of an indifference for our planet, like maintaining or keeping with the resources? Christian, go ahead.
Alright, well, I guess I feel responsible because if you think about it, like, I want to make sure that this planet is around from, the next generation, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's our responsibility to take care of it in this moment.
So you feel responsible because of your own reasons, like you want the world to be maintained so that way future generations could have a better life,
Yeah.
or do you just feel?
Yeah, because, I mean, even though maybe I, myself, would make a small impact, I feel like, I can change things in my own life to make sure that things are sustained better.
Okay, thank you. Any other? All right, we'll just move on then.
Part of this we see comes from the ethics we have, or each person has. Not every single person has the same ethics. And as a species, some people don't see it as wrong to ruin our planet, like we were talking about with the questions. Some people just have the mindset that it's there for me to use, no one else is using it, so I'm going to use it for my own gains. And they don't necessarily see the immediate impacts of this, as most of this affects our planet in the future and not presently. And it's not mainly the human species that is affected by it. Most of this, other than the pollution part of it, is the animals in the world around us. And an example of this is that as some companies do use animals to test medicine and pharmaceuticals and cosmetics because they don't want to risk the injury of a human when testing their products. And then you also have companies that dump their waste anywhere they can so they don't have to pay the fee to dump it safely. For real-life examples, in 2006, on the Ivory Coast, a company named Probocola dumped 500 tons of toxic fuel, hydrogen sulfide, and caustic soda. This led to 30,000 injuries within the Ivory Coast and 17 deaths. The death toll wasn't exactly high, but there was a high amount of injuries and long-term diseases caused by this. There's lung cancer, skin cancer, and this was all because they chose not to spend. It was the cost of $1,000 per cubic meter to safely dump the material through a company. So they chose to take it to another country that needed money, paid them off so they could dump it in their ocean. And this affected the environment around them and the people on the country. The second instance was how Walmart was fined $100 million for dumping chemicals within their store into trash cans or into our actual sink and sewers. This meant that when people would return hazardous waste, which is any type of fertilizer or pesticide that is returned, they would end up dumping it down the sink. Or if anyone returned a bleach or a chemical that's used in your household cleaning, they were taught to dump it down the drain. And a health inspector noticed that, and Walmart ended up paying $100 million because they weren't safely disposing of it and not thinking about the people around them and the environment that they're affecting. Because the bleach would go into our water, the pesticides go into our water that's cleaned and put into a sanitary system where it's clean for us, but there's still chemicals that aren't able to be removed. Another instance was Monsanto, who dumped chemicals into a aquifer of a town in UK called Gloucester. They dumped 17 tons of toxic waste, and this caused deaths around the people there because they didn't realize the water was toxic until orange liquid started coming into their sink. And the last one is an incident called Love Canal. They dumped 21,000 tons of hazardous chemicals, and this led to birth defects within a small country of less than 10,000 people, or a small town less than 10,000 people. And they dumped the chemicals there, they put dirt over it to cover it, and then they sold the land for $1 to the city of New York. And they built a school and playgrounds on top of it, not realizing what was underneath it. And after a couple years of heavy rainfall, the barrels started to come up from the ground, and kids were seen playing with the barrels. And one grandmother had 4 grandchildren with birth defects because this company didn't want to dispose of the chemicals correctly and chose to dump it without having to pay for their own gain without losing a lot of money. And the other example is companies that test products on animals. It's not exactly illegal. Illegal to do. The FDA hasn't put a ban on it for some products as testing food and medicine that could be dangerous for humans, but also might not be. And the problem with this is that we take animals out of their homes, or we breed animals in certain places or farms, and we use them and test them with products that we don't know if it's going to affect us yet. So we test it on them. And there's 2 types of testing that's terrible for animals. And one's the acute toxicity test, where they dump excessive amounts of the chemical or the product onto the skin of the animal to see how it affects it. This leads to widespread death over the animals, and this isn't done on humans because companies don't know how it'll affect them. And then other types is where they pour the chemical into the eye, and they dump 50 times the lethal dose that they think will kill a person, just to see how much an animal can withstand it. And these are just some of the companies that test on animals. Oh, and there's another activity. Imagine you're the owner of a cosmetics company. You're just starting up, so you don't exactly have a lot of money. But you have 2 options to test on animals or humans. But the first time testing, you're not 100% sure that your product will be harm-free. Would anyone like to do all?
I think that would be unique because obviously that would just fetch humans and force them, but we would give them some kind of like waiver. And you would put it in the fine print, like you could potentially die in the future. So, and then you have consent, whereas you can't have animals consent. Which makes it unethical.
Okay, very good. Brings back ethics. Anybody else?
I would also test on humans, because I think, in my opinion, companies who do test on animals, that says a lot about what chemicals they use. And if I was starting a cosmetic company, I would try to keep it ethical.
I feel like I would test it on humans because no animal is going to build a store and buy a cosmetic.
I would of course go and look for humans that were going to want to volunteer, but I have doubt that people are going to be willing to volunteer to have something for them to buy. It's more than likely burned. So, I mean, of course I would go and look for some opportunities to do it, but I think that at the end of testing is probably necessary to make sure humans want to.
But you're willing to hurt the animals instead?
Yeah.
Well, I would do it on humans too, because no matter like how close or like big genes are of an animal, I don't think like they react to the same as humans. So we also have like that possibility that it might work on animals, but not necessarily on humans.
Well, it depends obviously what on the owner when it comes to like what my company is making. If it's makeup, then I don't think I would be putting anything that would be so potentially harmful to humans that it would matter. And if I was doing chemicals, I'd test it on rabbits because rats can multiply very fast. And so the value of the single rabbit's life in terms of just doubling kind of population is less than a human, and you probably get, if you got caught, it's probably be, I don't know, isn't that illegal to test on?
Not exactly. In Europe it is.
It's not illegal on rabbits, it's illegal on humans for chemicals, so take the rabbits.
And you see how this kind of ties into ethics. Everyone they don't exactly see it the same way. Some people see it ethically, like Bithia said, I can't imagine hurting an animal, so I don't know why anyone would. Whereas Kyle said, I'm not going to risk hurting a human, I'm just going to hurt an animal because their life isn't worth as much. And you see how that kind of, each person sees it differently. Not everyone has their own view on this kind of stuff. And leading into another example, we have faith as a way of knowing. Faith is having complete trust or confidence in someone or something, or another example, another definition, a strong belief in the doctrines of the religion based on spiritual conviction rather than proof. And within religion, there's not exactly the need for proof. People believe something just because it's been retold to them and they've been taught it in their lives. And they hold religion with high regard. An example in the Bible is, then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, over all the creatures and move along the ground." It's not exactly giving man the right to rule animals, but it's basically saying that God created men to rule over the planet and all its resources, all the animals there. So, in a way, people can use this to justify their actions.
Okay. So I'm going to introduce Brandon Carter. He's an Australian physicist. He was born in 1942. He's still alive today. He mostly worked on black holes and proved a lot of Einstein's theories. Okay, so he proposed in 1973 for Copernicus's 500th birthday Anthropic principle. Why it matters that it was on Copernicus's birthday is because Copernicus himself once said that humans are not privileged in anything they do, that the world as works together to be privileged, that humans should not act privileged in anything they do. What the Anthropic principle kind of states is that humans live because there are so many coincidences in the world. Okay. There are a couple forms of the Anthropic principle. The first is the weak Anthropic principle, which is we must be prepared to take into account of the fact that our location in the universe is necessarily privileged to the extent of being compatible for our existence as observers. So what this is saying is basically what I just said. We are privileged. Humans are privileged in what we do, and I'll go into later on all the reasons why Brandon Carter said this. And the second is the strong Anthropic principle, which is universe must be such as to admit the creation of observers within it at some stage. So what this says that basically the universe is not going to stop human existence. Humans are going to exist no matter what we do. We could destroy the planet, we could do whatever we want. Our existence is not going to end. Okay. And the reason why this was said is because there are actually 122 anthropic constants in the world. Anthropic constants are ranges of numbers that allow for human life. That it's a very narrow range. Some examples are the first anthropic constant is our oxygen level. On Earth has 21% oxygen. If it were 18%, we'd probably be dead. But if it were 25%, we would also be dead. So there's a very narrow range of that we could have oxygen. Okay, the next one is the rate of expansion. If the universe had expanded 1 millionth more slowly than it did, it would have collapsed on itself because there are just too many things going on. This was at the beginning when the universe was first created. And the 10th one is the placing of Jupiter. Jupiter is in a place where it protects Earth from asteroids. If an asteroid's coming, Jupiter will kind of absorb it into its orbit, and it will not allow Earth to hit it. Okay, and also a very, very strange one is our Earth rotates on its axis at 23 degrees, and it's just right. If it were any more, we would lose gravity, and we would probably all die. Okay, and I go into anthropic principle and faith. So what this says is that there are way too many constants in the universe, anthropic constants, that allow for human life. It cannot be a coincidence. And this points the scientific community to say that there is a divine designer in the world, and that divine designer favors humans over other animals. Why would he put so many anthropic constants that allow for human life. Humans are privileged in whatever they do. Okay, someone calculate the probability of all the anthropic constants being in the range to allow for human existence. Assuming that there are 10 to the 22 planets in the universe, the chances are 1 in 10 raised to the 138th power. Those are the chances that all the constants allow for human existence. And this appeals to the scientific community because it not only uses science to back up the idea of faith. Okay, and what the anthropic principle means. The anthropic principle basically means that the universe is designed for human use. And there is a divine designer in the world. It might have different names, but there is one. And he clearly favors humans. Humans will not go extinct no matter what we do. We could destroy this planet, but for some reason, we will somehow survive, regardless of the situation. Okay, and this is kind of a perspective against the anthropic principle. The isotropy of the universe is a consequence of our existence. This is saying that the probability of anthropic constants being able to sustain life is equal to the entire universe, and there are not places in the human life that had a greater chance of being created. It's basically saying that we are not favored. Everything just kind of happened the way it did. There is a small chance that all the anthropic constants occurred here. However, we were not favored. It just happened. This was mostly by Stephen Hawking and Christopher Collins. They worked together with Brandon Carter and a lot of things they did. And however, when Brandon Carter suggested his anthropic principle, Stephen Hawking clearly disagreed with the part of divine designer, because that's a major part of the anthropic principle, that there is a divine designer. So Stephen Hawking and Christopher Collins, they went together and they formed this hypothesis that we are not lucky. It just happened that we were the one in the 10 and raised to 130th power. Okay, here's a quick activity. So I'm going to give you guys all Sudoku puzzles. You have like 3 minutes to fill it out. The first 3 groups to finish, they get whatever candy they want. And whoever finishes in whatever order they finish, they can come and get the candy. I'll finish. I got this. But you already graded it, Mr. Morris. You already graded it. Huh?
Was one group right?
Yeah. Go ahead, Logan. Logan. Brandon, it's okay. Logan, go. Eric, take some for your entire group. Eric, Christian wants you.
Hey, you like these, huh?
You get the lollipop, you get like 10 out of there.
The one that was like a takeover. Like a what? It was like a...
Yeah, I don't care.
Oh, no, okay. Okay, yeah.
I don't care. Watch, I'll show you right now. Okay, let me figure it out. What? Really? Yeah. So what was I doing?
Because I see every time I'm like,
oh.
I don't want to talk.
Hurry up.
Done.
Sorry.
Do you need it?
No. take one.
Don, take more.
There you go.
Hey, what do we want?
Every air. Get the Skittles. Hey, Skittles.
You grab four.
I'm worthless, Kyle.
I want these. I don't even know what they are.
You just want everything, I guess. Okay.
Okay, guys, there. Yeah. Start talking. Okay, guys, can you guys quiet down, please? Shh. Okay. Okay, so the reason why I did this activity is to show that it was a demonstration of kind of how we exploit resources. We do a little bit of work and we get a reward out of it. However, at some point the reward disappears and not everyone has enough for it, which is why I didn't bring enough for everybody. And it shows how humans are willing to do work in order to... Okay, yeah, it shows how humans are willing to do work in order to get candy. And a little hint was, I don't care if you got it wrong. You would have put 111 on all of them, you still would have won. It doesn't matter. But you still did some work in order to get the reward. Okay, go. Okay, my first real-life example is shrimp farming. This is an example of humans controlling the population of other animals for our own benefit because we eat them after we grow them. It has many negative effects on the environment. However, it is a cheap way to farm. Some of the negative effects is mangrove destruction. Mangroves are the trees that grow between the coast and the land, and this protects the sea from a lot of saltwater intrusion, and it protects the soil as well. So if the water goes up to the land, it will cause soil erosion, which is basically the topsoil kind of flies away. Okay, shrimp farming in poor countries has no separation between the salt water where the shrimp live, so a lot of the fresh water is getting contaminated, and it is causing more problems in solving. People will not be as hungry, however there will be salt water in the fresh water, which is causing dehydration. People don't have enough drinking water. Okay, if we grow more shrimp, there will be we will have enough to feed 795 million starving, of course. We would have to completely destroy all our resources in order to allow for this, because shrimp farming destroys the habitat. After we shrimp farm, we are no longer able to go back and do anything with that land. It's completely destroyed. Here's pictures of mangrove destruction. This is before and after. You see how shrimp farming affects the area because people chop it down in order for it to be easier for shrimp to live and survive there. Okay, another example is mining. Okay, mining companies primarily use cost-benefit analysis, in which they have to see, is it worth the cost in order to destroy all of this and see how much it costs. I have some numbers up there. Okay, it costs $1,200 to $1,300 to mine 1 ounce of gold. However, it only sells for $1,323. You can see that's not a lot of money. Well, it is a lot of money. However, it's not compared to what it should be because of the cost in order to mine that 1 ounce of gold. Okay, now the reason why we keep mining, even though it might not necessarily be cost effective, is because Americans, the typical American, use about 40,000 pounds of minerals every single year. And every year, most of those are not recycled, so we have to keep mining in order to support our habits. Okay, here's pictures of mining the Appalachian Mountains. The Appalachian Mountains are mostly in Virginia and those states over there. You can kind of see how ugly it looks after a while. Has been going on for a while, however, everything's starting to slow down now. Okay, the next one is slash and burn farming, which Christian and Kyle kind of already mentioned. It's a cheap way of clearing land for farmers, mostly in South America, to start farming. So they just set everything on fire, destroy all the land, all the trees there. It's mostly forests that they destroy, and they just grow land there. However, Because of this practice, it causes coral bleaching. Because if it's near the coast, all the soot will go into the water. It will kill all the animals inside the sea, ocean, whatever. Okay, now it's okay for small-scale use, maybe a small farm family. However, on a large-scale use to feed many people, it will cause soil erosion, in which the topsoil flies away, and it will no longer sustain growing life. You will not be able to grow anything in there. So a question comes out. Is it ethical to tell the poor that they can't ruin the environment when it's their only form of survival? Anyone answer that, please? Yes, in class.
I mean, there are millions of people who are starving on this planet, and a lot of them are impoverished. And if this is their only way to gain sustenance, I mean, I cause more damage in my own life, so I should really change my ways of living rather than forcing them to change theirs.
Okay. Anyone else? Christian?
Well, like I said before, it's kind of a difficult question because you have to weigh, like, the net good for the entire population of the world versus, just these poor families that really can't do anything for themselves. So I would say it's kind of ethically, even though it's, bad that they're starving or, impoverished, it's, I think in terms of like net harm, it's a lot more unethical to allow this to happen.
Okay. Okay, it's just a picture soil erosion next. Then coral destruction before and after. Okay, and how can we assess our impact on the environment? So we have the ways of knowing, just sense perception, memory, and intuition. So we use sense perception. We can see our destruction, like sight, touch, smell. We can see that we're clearly destroying and killing animals, and that's how we see our impact on the planet. It's not like, well, we can feel it, but we can see it. We can clearly see our destruction. Okay, and here's a kind of counter perspective to our entire presentation. Oh, have we helped our planet? We've helped our planet with introduction of species. We brought animals from native parts of your land to other non-natives. Like, we brought animals from South America here. We brought animals from Asia and other. We moved them around, and we've domesticated animals in order to allow for them to survive on their with our help. Next. Okay, how do we know our place in the universe? Again, it's sense perception and reason. With sense perception, humans can see that there's clearly some superiority between humans and other animals. We can see that we have a greater advantage than others, so we reason that we must have a greater standing in the universe. And then we use reason to reason we use to make a decision. It gives us a justification for what we do. So with sense perception, we can see what we do. We reason that because we can survive under more conditions than other species, we must be greater than the other species. There's some superiority complex there. Okay, and the conclusion is the Anthropic principle uses scientific appeals as well as theological in order to appeal to the philosophical, scientific community, and this allows for a lot of justification and a lot of the reasons why humans treat the planet the way we do. And then faith is used as a way of negating science, but still coming to the same conclusion. And that's it.